So you may have already listened to Sarah speak about the distribution process for her film #Like, but we also had spoken about her actors, and it all came up because I was telling her how much I loved the film and how much I appreciated that it was a real thriller and the characters were really great and it wasn't a slasher movie. And so she got to talking about making the film, the actors in the film, and then we got to talking about some tips for actors just starting out in indie films. So check it out.
And I appreciate your comments because, we all work in such isolation as filmmakers. You're sitting at your little desk doing your writing alone. You have some readers maybe, but then you do more. Then you're alone in a way. Even when you're shooting, you're alone because you're so much in your head. You're holding it all together, particularly in a lower budget thing. Like I had a good script supervisor, Larry was fantastic, but you're holding, you know how it is. You're holding so much in your head, like, I need to make sure I get this emotional moment. I need to get sure I get that beat. And you can't over explain that to the actors because you kill their performance. You can't over explain it to the scriptee because they're like, no, I'm just making sure her ring's on the right hand right now.
Your angle
So,
matches and we're not nauseous. Yeah, no, I mean, I can say, like, as being an editor in life, I mean, obviously I direct, but, that's my bread and butter, right? When I'm on a set directing my own film, I'm editing. I'm going, oh, if I don't get this, or, oh, we're running out of time, I have to get this other thing. And people are like, why do you want a shot of that? I'm like, don't even ask me. Let's just get it because I know I'm going to be screwed later, right?
100%. And particularly when you're in a lower budget film, you don't have time to have conversations. You don't have time to argue about it. And it's just, you just have to say, just trust me, I need this. In the scene, in the first time Rosie goes down to the basement with Mark Menchaca, there were certain inserts there that I had to show. They couldn't just be shadowy moments. I'm not going to be too specific, but you really needed to see things. But it also still needed to look like the rest of the film and look moody. And I got into a little bit of, pushback with some of the departments on that. And some of the departments sounds like 100 people. It's like 5 of us, but you know what I mean?
But they're all their own
And
department, so.
yes, yeah, you have,
Yes.
everyone doing their different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, yes. And so that's kind of, you're sort of alone in a weird way when you're shooting. And then when you're editing, you're very much alone with your editor if you're not the editor yourself. So it's great. So long story short, thank you so much for giving me positive feedback because it's so rare that you engage about your film.
Yeah. And I actually was, I not to give it away, but I can cut this out if you say, Sherry, don't say that. It's fine.
Okay.
But not to give anything away, but for me, I don't like violent films. And I was really worried as it was going along that, oh God, it's going to get really graphic. I'm not going to be able to watch this. And it's more psychological and it's more emotional than, gratuitous violence. It's not gratuitous violence. So I was so happy about that. That's partly just me. I don't deal well with violence, so.
I agree 100%. I set out because I started writing this just before the Me Too wave, like 4.5 years ago, and thinking about a film I needed to make. And I thought this was still when women were getting sexually harassed and abused. Well, they still probably are, but, just is like it was a free for all. And women were not getting hired. Women's films were not getting sold. There was female lead characters were not considered as valuable properties. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to make this movie. I want to make a movie about internet predation, but I'm going to have to make it as an elevated genre film because otherwise it's not going to be considered. And there's like a little chink, of light that you could sneak through with the elevated genre and have a Trojan horse of a story in there. So I did that, but I don't like horror. I actually get really scared and won't watch horror either. And I also don't like, I saw something the other day on my Instagram feed. I know Speech from Arrested Development because I worked with him years ago. And he just posted something saying, delete all your murder songs. And he was talking about people with your rap catalog or hip hop catalog. See, it sounds so old saying rap. Your hip hop catalog and and just get rid of the murder songs. And that's kind of how I feel about film genres. Like, I don't need to see one more dead girl on a screen. So I know that I wanted to tell a story about how internet predation can lead to very dark things, but I didn't want to show it. So it was like there's sexuality and nudity. I didn't want to show it. I didn't need to show it to create that sense of tension.
Right.
And same with the violence. I knew I didn't want to have any blood, guts, gore. I didn't want any of that. It was all psychological, emotional violence. And what's very interesting is when the film came out, a lot of the reviewers, I mean, the female reviewers responded really powerfully to it, and positively. And I think most people knew it was a lower budget film, so I got a little bit of a leeway with that, even though I don't feel it looks low budget.
It doesn't look low
You know,
budget at all. For
thank you
people
so
watching
much.
right now, it doesn't. It's got great sound. It looks great. It's very nicely stylized. So go on, go on.
And the performances are fantastic, but we'll talk about that after. But so yeah, I got some leeway on that a little bit. Or people were just impressed that it was pulled off. But a lot of the male reviewers, not all of them, and I had some very, very positive male reviewers also, who are really more in the bigger canon of filmmaking and thrillers versus the horror guys. But a lot of the horror guys turned and they were like, one of them, he was even cursing in his review, F this, da da da, because they were saying so violent, anti-men, and blah, blah. And I'm like, how many slasher movies have you watched where women are getting just like mown down and ripped apart? And that's okay. But there's a psychological thriller where a man might have a bit of a hard time.
Yeah, and
It's really
it's not
interesting.
that terrible. I mean, I'm not saying I'd want to be in his shoes at all, but it's not that terrible. Like I watch I'm a big sci-fi person in my own little way. And I can't stand all these sci-fi movies that are now like, how are we going to kill everybody off by the end? And there's just like things blowing up, people being ripped apart, men, women, it's like equal opportunity destruction. And your film doesn't like, that's not what your film is. So I don't even understand that reaction, except that I would say it's very insecure people.
It threatens their view of the world because they're not, being deferred to
Yeah.
in the narrative in any way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I understand. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
So I just wanted to give a shout out to the cast in my film because they really were incredibly supportive of the film. Mark Menchaca, who stars in Ozark, he played the gay hillbilly brother, the Russ Langmore. He was also Jack in The Outsider, the Stephen King show on HBO, and he was in The Sinner, and he's written and directed movies of his own. He's really just a huge talent, and he came on board the film, and I said, I'm sorry, there's hardly, it's like SAC minimum, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no, I'm fascinated by this script. I really like it. And I mean, he literally took the bus up to Woodstock. He was so low maintenance, such a cool dude. And just to talk about his acting, I mean, don't you think he had to like sit right on that little line of like not giving too much away, but
Yeah.
bringing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was really stunning. And then how he worked with Sarah was incredible. Sarah Rich, who was the lead actress, she was a real new discovery, and I'm so proud of the work that she did in the film. And he was amazing with her. They were like sister and brother. They were like best buds, and he was so generous with her and so helpful to her because she had more of a theater background at the time. She's done more TV and film now, but she's like the new Jennifer Lawrence. She's amazing, and I really, really loved working with her. And I felt so fortunate because working like low budget, you're running from thing to thing to thing, and you can't baby people. You really need to just, have it work.
Yeah,
And
everybody
she
has
was
to
a one.
come prepared with their A game, and I know she got great reviews because I was reading through a lot of shout outs to her in reviews. Amazing, and yeah, he was great. I don't want to give away the film, so I would just say that the whole time you're like, well, what I don't know, what's happening? Like, what I don't want to give it away, but Yeah, he really does walk
Yeah,
that line. I'll
is
just say
he
that.
or isn't he? Is she or isn't
Isn't she
she?
right?
Yes, it's like that that's the beauty of a noir and a thriller, that you could do that and doing that through performance because we had such limited space to move around and make things happen, particularly for Mark. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
great. And
yeah. And if you
uh,
watch the film, you'll get that. You'll laugh at that too.
Dakota Lustig, who played Rory, was amazing because he had to do a similar kind of job of being mysterious in some ways. He was just recently on the reboot of Dexter. So yeah, he got 2 episodes, which was great because being a young person and trying to get your career, keep it going during COVID, I can't even imagine how difficult. But yeah, he was great and fun and cute matinee idol, good looks, but then also a lot of intelligence and other stuff going on. And Liz Meanders, who played the best friend, the redhead girl, love Liz. And she had a tiny role, but she got popped. And then Jolene Marquez was so sweet, who was like the grounded best friend of Rosie, Sarah Rich's character. And I thought Jolene played it with a lot of dignity. It didn't go into WB territory. It could have been very that teen movie kind of
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And
No, it was very
yeah,
mature, and yeah, no, I thought everybody did a great job in it, and it's especially hard for those of you who are watching who may not know this. When you're shooting an indie film, like how many days did you shoot compared to like a bigger movie? Like,
well, actually, we didn't do too badly on days. We shot for 22 days. So that was pretty good.
but
But,
when
sometimes
Paramount makes a movie, like when a studio makes a movie, how many days are they shooting?
100.
Yeah. So that's how much faster it's moving and how much you really have to rely on your actors, know your lines and bring something to the table, bring something interesting to the table. Don't just show up.
Don't depend on the director to play you like a violin. Be prepared. And when we say be prepared, if we're talking to actors or young and up and coming actors, it means not only know your lines back and forth, be prepared to pivot, but also have done some character development on your own. Don't expect the director to make your character do something on the day. I've had that in the past, working on little short films where someone will come and say, well, what's my motivation? What should I be doing? And I was like, honey, you should have thought about that 2 weeks ago.
Going through all that, that's what a professional actor does. I think a lot of people starting out think that they just show up and they're told what to do. And maybe on a
Mm-hmm.
commercial,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
even on a like somebody who works on big projects, they bring a lot to the table and they bring little things. And I love when an actor shows up with, oh, I thought about this. Maybe this person always does this or has this mannerism or
Love
whatever.
that.
That is just awesome because it's not. Yes, filmmaking can be a dictatorship. You can say I want this, I want that, but every once in a while somebody goes, well, why can't the glasses be red? Because if they were red it would whatever, and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
making something up
I
here, but
love that. I agree. No, I agree 100%. And that's character development that they've thought about it. But at the same time, also be prepared to let it go
right.
because you have to trust the director going, particularly if it's a writer director, going, you can't have red glasses because of a reason and just trust me because someone else arrives with red glasses or whatever it is.
It's right.
But
Whatever it is, right.
any work you do, I think, is never lost. And I think it's not about actors being arrogant. I think it's just actors, maybe some are, for example, the guy who played Detective Horn in the movie is on very, very briefly. Um, Jeff Wincott, he's a super experienced actor. And he came just like ready to go. He like came out on the day ready to go. And it was we had a really tough day that day because one of our crew members, family members was sick. So I was even going to maybe cancel the shoot because we were shooting we actually shot in the local police station in
Oh.
Woodstock and they were very kind and they just let me do it for free. They were very sweet and they just said, if anyone comes in and has to use the bathroom, you need to let them. So, but I knew it was going to be a lot of distraction and complication. And then we had this crew member's family member who was sick, and we were like, should we cancel the shoot or not? And they powered through. But if we'd had an inexperienced actor there, and we were trying to do, it was a lot of blocking because there were a lot of beats. I don't know if you remember that scene, but when Rosie goes to the police station, there are these beats in it, and you had to build the beats. You couldn't just do like a long handheld shot and then it was done. You
Right.
had to set it up, the 50-50. Then you had to go back a little bit and see her chase, and then you had to get to him and him pushing her. But so it was like 4 or 5 setups that were really simple, but with an inexperienced actor, that moment would have been devastating because it would have stressed everyone out, and might have lost our location, and it would have thrown the other actor off. But so it was just like butter. It
Yeah.
was
No, he
great.
did a great job. I love the moment where she drops all the papers too. I just have to throw that out because I was like, that would be me. That would be me right there. No, wait, but I did all this work. you know?
And it's so funny because someone saw that and said, "Oh, was it an accident you put in?" I was like, "Absolutely not. We had like 3 folders ready to go with the papers so she could drop them a few times, and we matched it from. If you look, you'll see it's matched from the wide to the close up." Um, but yeah, and it's also for people to know who aren't filmmakers. Often you'll find bits of business like that happening because that was an emotional character moment that she was trying to be grown up with the grown up. I'm all prepared, and she loses it. But it's also a great cutting device. As an editor, you know that. So if
Where-
some bit of business or action's happening, it helps with the cut because I knew we'd want to cut
Cut. Yeah.
there.
Yeah. No, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, it's cut well. And actually, yeah, what I loved about it though, I'm in this little tangent, but what I loved about it too is like, yes, she's trying to be an adult, but she's like dropping everything and she's like, no, but I did my homework. Look, I did my job. Right. And
Totally. I'm so
it still
glad
has
that
that
came
young
across.
person thing going on. Right. Not that I don't feel like that often in my life, but wait, constantly it doesn't stop. Everybody keeps going, but it's nice. I mean, it's adult but youthful, which is really great. And his method of dismissing her is awesome. You did a great job with all of that. That was awesome. Yeah, it's nice when an actor has that one, like a one. Right, I think that was his only scene. Am I wrong about that?
Yep, that was
Yeah,
his only scene.
yeah.
Yep.
And
And it was
but I
so great, but
remember
you
it.
remember him. Hmm.
But I remember it, and that's what a good actor brings to the table. It's very true. It's very true.
So true. Yeah, and the whole thing of, how I kept having to reinforce that she's young because she's in a position of power in some ways, but she's young. She's doing things that are dangerous and a little crazy. But is she crazy, or is she just in that teenage brain where you do things and you're not thinking about consequences until you get yourself in it? And, I kept having to remind people that she's young in the script. So that was just one of those moments that she's.
Yeah, she's young, but she's before the movie even starts. She's obviously been through a lot because of the sister, and that's not giving anything away. The movie starts there, and so and then she's left. Her mother leaves her alone, so she's left to contend with everything. She has to be a grown up. Like it's this weird thing that happens, unfortunately, to young people when tragedy or stressful situations hit a family.
Yes,
So that's
very
very
well
well
said.
captured.
Yeah, yeah. And who do we love more? You think about characters like Linda Mance in Out of the Blue, the Dennis Hopper movie, another amazing film, or, again, Jennifer Lawrence in Winter's Bone, or, these characters that are up against it that are old before their age, and older than their age in a lot of ways, but then they're still kids. And I always find that so moving, that kind of a character, because aren't we all a little bit like that? Even as we become adults, I'm still waiting to grow up fully.
I don't intend to ever grow up. I've given up on that. I'm just embracing that I'm still 12 most of the time.
Yes, yes. That's what I always say to people. I think at heart I'm a 9-year-old boy, but.
I'm a 12-year-old
Oh,
girl that didn't fit in. So there you
yeah.
go.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, I have to say, I'm really thrilled to talk to you about the film. And as I said, you'll have links for people to watch it. I hope they do. Trigger warnings. There are some dark moments in it. Um, but I think you'll discover a really amazing new actress in the film. And hopefully you'll want to see more stuff by me and the other actors in it.
Yes, that's right. Keep tuning in. Well, thank you for coming on.
It
Yay.
was such a pleasure. Yay back at you, and thank you for making it happen.
Oh,
It's
you.
been it's been quite a ride making and releasing a movie during COVID, And, I had so much support from cast and crew and Fatales and, my DGA women's group and, so many women in my life that really supported me. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
been
that's
a
what it's
great
about too.
experience.
We all have to keep moving forward together.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.